He was just my son's friend, polite, quiet, maybe a little too observant. I didn't think twice when I offered him the guest room for the night. But what happened in the quiet hours after everyone else had gone to bed left me breathless, still wondering how it all happened, and why I can't stop thinking about that moment. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? I know we've got people tuning in from all over the country. Let's see if your city pops up. Alright, let me take you back to the night everything changed. It all started on a Thursday evening, the kind of quiet, cool spring evening where you just want to light a candle, pour a glass of wine and unwind. My son Marcus had come over for dinner. He does that once or twice a week since moving out. I always love having him around, even if he does treat my living room like it's still his teenage hideout. That night he brought someone with him. His friend Daniel. I recognized the name from stories Marcus had told. Daniel was the quiet one in the group, the one who always listened more than he spoke. I remembered him from a few of Marcus's birthday parties back in the day, lanky and reserved, always hanging back. But he wasn't that boy anymore. He stood in my doorway, tall and broad-shouldered now, with a soft-spoken confidence, and the kind of presence you don't expect from someone still in their 20s. His hair was a bit long, curling slightly over his ears. He smiled when he saw me, dimples creasing his cheeks, and something about that smile made me feel noticed. Dinner was easy. We made spaghetti together. Well, I cooked and they hovered like hungry wolves, occasionally stirring a saucepan or stealing a bite. Daniel offered to help set the table. And I was surprised by how comfortable he was, how naturally he moved in my kitchen. He wasn't like most of Marcus's friends, loud, distracted, glued to their phones. No, Daniel was attentive, his eyes often lingering on me just a second longer than most would. I noticed. I absolutely noticed. After dinner, Marcus got a call and excused himself, mumbling something about heading out to meet a few others. It wasn't the first time he'd done that, dropping in, eating, and running out with barely a hug goodbye. But Daniel stayed that he was too tired to go out, and asked if it'd be okay to hang out for a bit. We moved to the living room, just the two of us now, the house settling into its usual nighttime hush. I offered him tea and we sat on the couch, something light playing on the TV more for background noise than anything else. He asked me about my painting. Hate noticed the canvas in the corner, half finished from the weekend before. Most people barely give it a glance, but Daniel, he asked questions. What was I painting? Why those colors? Did it make me feel calm? It felt strange and sweet having someone listen so closely. Most days I just talked to the cat. I hadn't felt that kind of attention in years. When the clock chimed past 11, I asked him if he needed a ride or if he was calling an Uber. He hesitated, said Marcus had taken his car, and he didn't want to bother anyone. There was a moment of awkwardness before I offered the guest room. You can stay here, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. It's late, and honestly, I feel better knowing you weren't walking around downtown this time of night. He looked at me with something I couldn't quite name. Warmth, gratitude, something deeper. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You're not? I said, the bed's made. You'd be doing me a favor eating the leftover muffins in the morning. He smiled again. That dimpled smile that was starting to feel like a tiny hook under my ribs. We said goodnight. I pointed him to the guest room, showed him where the towels were, and then retreated to my own bedroom. I lay there staring at the ceiling for a long time. It wasn't just the creak of the old house or the occasional hum of passing cars. It was something else. An energy in the air. A weight in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I got up, not sure why. Maybe I just needed water. Maybe I wanted to check if the thermostat was too low. Maybe I was lying to myself. As I walked down the hall, I saw a sliver of light spilling out from the guest room. The door was slightly ajar. I hesitated, then gently knocked. Hey, I whispered, poking my head in. Everything okay? Daniel was sitting up in bed, shirtless, the blanket low on his waist. His skin glowed under the soft lamplight, and his eyes met mine with something that looked like understanding. I couldn't sleep, he said, his voice quiet. Didn't mean to leave the door open. I don't know why I stepped further in. I don't know why my heart was beating so loudly in my ears. I couldn't sleep either. I said, it's this house. Too quiet. He chuckled softly, then paused. Do you want to sit? I did. Slowly, I lowered myself onto the edge of the bed, making sure there was enough space between us to be respectful, but still close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. We talked about life, about loneliness. He told me his parents divorced when he was young, that he'd bounced around too many places to ever feel settled, that he always liked coming to our house because it felt safe. I told him about the silence after Marcus moved out, about how the evenings stretched too long and how I'd sometimes fall asleep on the couch just to avoid the emptiness of my room. We sat there, two people of different generations sharing the same ACH. There was a moment. I remember it clearly, a long silence. And then he reached out hesitantly and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. My breath caught, not because I was shocked but because I wasn't. Our eyes met, and in that stillness the air between us changed. It thickened, not with lust but with emotion, with something that felt like understanding, like comfort, like two people discovering they weren't as alone as they thought. And then I wish I could tell you I stood up and walked away right then, that I patted his hand, smiled and said good night. That would have been the easier story to live with, but it wouldn't be the truth. I stayed. He didn't rush. He didn't move toward me in some reckless, hungry way. He simply let his fingers rest lightly at my jawline, searching my face for any sign that I wanted him to stop. I didn't. I don't know how long we stayed there like that, holding the space between us like something fragile. But eventually I felt myself leaning in. Not just my body but my heart, my breath, the years of quiet aching I hadn't even known I was carrying. When our lips touched, it wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some dramatic movie moment. It was tender, soft, the kind of kiss that says more than words ever could. It felt needed. When I pulled back, I kept my hand on his chest, steadying myself, breathing through the waves of thoughts crashing through my head. This is not what I expected tonight to be, I said, almost laughing at the absurdity of it all. Me neither, he replied, his voice low, sincere. But I don't regret it. Do you? I should have. Maybe a part of me did, but what I felt more than anything was clarity. This wasn't about age or right and wrong in the eyes of a judgmental world. This was about two people in a quiet house in a quiet moment offering each other something deeply human: connection. We didn't cross any more lines that night. I stood eventually, kissed his forehead and said, "Good night, Daniel." He looked at me with such warmth it almost undid me. "Good night, Olivia." I walked back to my bedroom, heart pounding, limbs trembling, but not from shame, from feeling alive. The next morning I woke early. I didn't sleep much, but there was something granding about the sunrise filtering in through the curtains. I slipped into a row, padded barefoot, to the kitchen and started a pot of coffee. I heard the shower running in the guest bath and let the sound settle around me. I kept asking myself, what now? Was last night just a passing moment of emotion? Was it confusion? Or did it mean something deeper? He emerged a little later, hair damp, wearing the same jeans and plain white t-shirt from the night before. He looked around awkwardly until I handed him a mug of coffee and nodded toward the table. "I made muffins," I said. "Well, reheated them." He smiled and that familiar, disarming dimple appeared again. "Best kind of breakfast," he replied. We sat and ate mostly in silence, not uncomfortable, but cautious, as though neither of us wanted to be the first to break the spell or define what the night had been. Eventually I cleared my throat. "Daniel, about last night," he looked up. "Yeah." I paused. "I don't regret it either, but I don't want you to feel obligated or confused. I'm not expecting anything from you." His eyes softened. "I'm not confused. You don't scare me, Olivia. I don't know what this is. But I know I felt something real." That stunned me into silence for a moment. He wasn't some boy with a crush. He was speaking with a kind of emotional maturity I hadn't expected. And truthfully, it both comforted and unsettled me. He left an hour later, saying he'd text Marcus and meet up with him. As I closed the door behind him, the echo of his presence lingered in the air. My home felt fuller, my body warmer, my heart a little messier. Days passed. Marcus didn't say anything. Didn't seem to suspect a thing. But Daniel, he messaged me. At first just short thank yous, then a few longer notes, comments about art, about things we talked about. And then one night 3 days later he sent, "I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me. Do you think about it too?" I stared at the message for what felt like an hour before replying. "Yes, I do." That was the beginning of something even stranger than that night. A quiet, secret connection blooming between us through words, glances, pauses in conversation when he'd come over with Marcus again. One evening, maybe a week after Marcus was over watching a game in the den, Daniel came too. I made snacks, laughed at their jokes, tried to act normal. But every time Daniel looked at me, I felt it again. That undercurrent, that knowing, that pull. Later that night, after they left, I found a note on the counter. Just a torn piece of paper tucked under the cookie jar. I unfolded it slowly, hands trembling. It said, "I want to see you again alone, only if you want that too." I sat at the kitchen table, the note clutched between my fingers, and stared into the soft lamplight, wondering how the most unexpected night of my life had turned into something I couldn't stop wanting more of. The next time I saw Daniel alone, it was because I invited him. I wrestled with the decision for days, my conscience and curiosity playing tug-of-war with my better judgment. I reminded myself that I was a grown woman, 57 years old, not foolish or fragile, and certainly not naive. I'd lived through heartbreak, loneliness, silence. I knew what it felt like to give too much and get too little. But what was happening between us, it didn't feel like any of those things. It felt careful, intentional, and oddly enough healing. I sent the message on a Friday morning. Short and direct but warm. "If you're free this weekend, I could use some help with the garden." Saturday afternoon, he replied within minutes. "I'll be there." The hours ticked by slowly until Saturday came. I spent too much time deciding what to wear. Not because I wanted to impress him. At least that's what I told myself, but because I wanted to feel good, wanted to feel seen. I settled on a soft cotton blouse and a pair of worn jeans that hugged me in the right places without trying too hard. I didn't bother with makeup. Just a bit of lip balm and a spritz of lavender behind my ears. When the doorbell rang, my heart fluttered, and I hated how teenage it made me feel. Daniel stood there with a pair of gloves in his back pocket, and that same easy smile on his lips. "Ready to dig in?" he asked. We spent the next hour kneeling in the soil, pulling weeds, and trimming the overgrown rose bushes along the fence. The sun hung low, bathing everything in a golden haze, and I caught myself watching the way the light touched his face, how he moved, how comfortable he seemed here with me. We didn't talk much, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that only exists between people who feel safe together. At one point he paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "You've got a beautiful garden," he said. I tried to keep it alive. I smiled, placing a hand on my hip. "It's been a little neglected lately." He looked at me then, not just at my face but through it. "We all get neglected sometimes." I didn't respond. I couldn't, not with words. Instead, I motioned for us to head inside and get some water. We stood in the kitchen side by side, pouring cold glasses and leaning against the counter. "You didn't have to come help," I said after a few quiet moments. "I wanted to," he said simply. That's when I turned to him, really turned. The space between us closed naturally, as if drawn by some quiet gravity neither of us wanted to resist. I reached out, brushing a dirt smudge from his cheek with my thumb. My fingers lingered. His hand came to rest lightly over mine. "I think about you, Olivia," he whispered. "Every day. I don't know what this is, but I know it's not nothing." Something broke open in me when he said that. A dam I'd held shut for years. I had spent so long being careful, being modest, hiding away the parts of myself that still craved affection, attention, intimacy. And yet, here was this young man, my son's friend, telling me the truth I didn't even know I'd been waiting to hear. I leaned in and he met me halfway. This kiss was different. It wasn't tentative like the first time. It was hungry but gentle, purposeful. When his arms wrapped around me, I let myself fall into them fully, like I belonged there. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and was finally allowed to exhale. We didn't rush. We moved through that afternoon like we had all the time in the world. The hours slowed down as we found ourselves on the living room couch, legs tangled, hands exploring each other's presence, more than just each other's bodies. It wasn't about lust. It was about being seen. He kissed the back of my hand like it meant something. He looked into my eyes every time I spoke. He listened to every breath I took as though it held a story he wanted to learn by heart. I remember lying with my head on his chest, his fingers lazily tracing circles on my arm and whispering, "This isn't supposed to happen." He tilted his head toward me. "Says who?" I didn't have an answer. The evening came and went, and neither of us rushed to change what was happening. We cooked a late dinner together, something simple, grilled cheese and tomato soup. It tasted like comfort in childhood and something entirely new. When it was time for him to leave, he kissed me at the door. Not like a goodbye, but like a promise. "I want to keep seeing you," he said. "Even if it's complicated." I nodded. "Me too." As I watched him walk down the steps and disappear into the night, I realized something strange and beautiful. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to fill a void. I was choosing to let someone in. The days that followed were a strange blend of calm and chaos. Calm in the quiet, simple joy I felt when Daniel messaged me in the mornings asking how I slept or what I was painting that day. And chaos in the storm of thoughts that haunted me each time Marcus called. He was my son's friend. That reality didn't vanish just because the moments between us felt sincere. Every time Daniel came over now, even when Marcus was with him, my heart raced. Not because I feared being caught, but because I felt more alive than I had in years. And that was terrifying. One evening, Marcus dropped by unannounced. I hadn't seen him in a couple of weeks, and I could tell something was on his mind the moment he walked through the door. "Hey, Mom," he said, pulling me into a hug. "You look happy." I blinked. "Happy? Yeah, glowing actually." He chuckled. "What's going on here? Did you start seeing someone?" I smiled awkwardly and waved him off. "Oh please. I've just been taking better care of myself, that's all." He grinned, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes I didn't like. "Daniel said you two had lunch the other day without me." I froze for a beat too long. "He dropped something off," I said quickly, forcing a casual shrug. "Stayed for tea, nothing more." Marcus didn't press, but I knew he noticed something. His radar for discomfort was always finely tuned when it came to me. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table in silence, running my fingers over the wood grain, asking myself the questions I'd been avoiding. Could this, whatever it was with Daniel, really exist in the real world? It was one thing to share glances and secrets in the quiet of my home. It was another to imagine him standing beside me at the grocery store, or meeting friends, or worse, facing Marcus if the truth came out. That night, Daniel came by late after a work shift. Hair mussed, eyes tired but full of light when I opened the door. He didn't say anything, just pulled me close and kissed my forehead. "Can I stay tonight?" he asked. I nodded and let him inside. We didn't do much. We curled up on the couch, watched an old black and white movie on mute, and held hands beneath the blanket. I think both of us knew we were running out of space in the shadows. He broke the silence first. "Would it scare you if I said, I feel something real here?" I didn't answer immediately. My throat tightened, not from fear, but from the terrifying beauty of being truly seen. "No," I said softly. "What scares me is how much I feel it, too." We talked for hours that night about what we wanted, what we feared, and what this could possibly become. He told me that being with me made him feel grounded, seen, safe. And I confessed the truth I hadn't said aloud to anyone in years. I didn't think anyone would ever want me like this again. Not like a woman. Not as someone desirable. "Dust me." Daniel looked at me with such depth that it brought tears to my eyes. "Olivia, you don't even see what I see when I look at you. It's not your age. It's not about what people might say. It's you. You're warm. You're thoughtful. You make people feel at home just by being around." I looked away, embarrassed by how much I needed those words. But he cupped my face gently and turned me back toward him. "You make me feel like I finally arrived somewhere I didn't know I was always looking for." The tears came then, soft, quiet ones. The kind that fall when your soul finally exhales. In the morning we made pancakes, laughed over burnt edges, and danced barefoot in the kitchen to old music that played through my little countertop speaker. I couldn't remember the last time I felt that light. A week later we agreed to sit down with Marcus. It was my idea. I didn't want this, whatever it was, to live in secrecy forever. If it was real, it had to be honest. The conversation was difficult. Marcus didn't speak for a long time after we told him. I watched his jaw clench, his eyes narrow. His thoughts were like a storm behind his silence. Then finally he looked up. "I don't get it," he said. "But if you're happy, Mom, and he's not playing you, then who am I to judge?" It wasn't a blessing, but it wasn't condemnation either. And for now that was enough. Now weeks later Daniel and I are still whatever we are. We don't need a label. We take walks. We share dinners. He reads while I paint. Sometimes he falls asleep with his head in my lap, And I stroke his hair, still amazed that this life chose me. I know the world would call us unusual. I know whispers would follow if we walked into a room hand in hand. But I also know this: nothing about what we share feels wrong. Feels human. Feels earned. And it feels like a second chance I never saw coming. So, if you're out there wondering whether love can find you after 50, whether it can arrive in the most unexpected shape at the most inconvenient time, I'll tell you what I've learned. Love doesn't check birth dates. Checks hearts.